सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So we saw last time that a wise saha buddhiman manushyeshu, right? The person who is wise, he sees karmani akarma and akarmani karma. Okay. So what we thought general definition is that when I am very active, I am doing karma, and when I am sleeping or I am sitting down, then there is no karma. This is a normal definition of a normal person. But he says the wise person's definition is completely different. It is nothing to do with whether you are doing something or not doing something. Because even if you are sitting, it's an action. And even if you are sleeping, it's an action. So a wise person, what generally people think is a non-action, which is sleeping or sitting, the person sees it as action. Okay? And the action, a wise person sees it as non-action. Why? Because he sees Atma as not the doer at all. Okay? So if you put your eye in this individuality, so if you put it in the body, body is what? It is active, there is action. If you put your eye in any of the functions of the mind, which is what? The buddhi, ahankara, chittam and manas. In all these and where there is a free will, then there is an action taking place. Okay? But Atma, which is awareness, there is no action whatsoever. So once you understand and you put the
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I mean, just for clarification.
Yes.
I know what is manas, I know what is ahankara,
Yeah.
and I know what is buddhi.
Buddhi-
Chittam, I am not very sure.
You know, chittam is memory.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
And memory is two types, conscious and unconscious memory. So all these, there is a choice you make, you use all the different emotions, you use your memory, you use your cognitive capacity, there is an I entity which makes a decision. So all these are the places where activities are taking place. Okay? But if you now understand Atma as awareness, then there is no action on the part of Atma. Now does it then mean the person who understands stops using all these different faculties? No. Okay? The person can be extremely active. The person knows that this body is endowed to me. This mind and its different faculties are endowed to me. And all these different people and my particular role in the grand scheme of things is something which I am born here with. So I don't need to kind of take myself away from anything. Okay? But even though I'm very active, there is no sense of doership for the wise person. That is just because the person understands the nature of Atma. It is only cognitive. It has got nothing to do with whether you are living an active life or you are living a quiet life. Okay? So having said that, you still may have this confusion because the Vedic culture allows a lifestyle which is sannyasa. Okay? So a sannyasa lifestyle is where you leave everything to pursue only the knowledge. That is the idea. Okay? What happens is that in fact many people who studied with me now, they are sannyasis, you know, and we've seen the ritual. So they go near Ganga and they declare to the sun, to the moon, to all the different forces that right now I have now realized that self-knowledge is the only pursuit that I am looking for. So I am giving up all the other roles. I am not interested in anything else. Okay? So So this is something which is done through the, and then the person says, I am a non-competitor in the society. I don't compete. Because any time you want to get something, whether, I think Jagdish was saying something, that even by going to a very good school, there is a little bit of harm that you do. Why? Because you deprive others of the same education. So in a competitive society, even though you play all the, play by the rules, you still cannot avoid total non-harming. Okay? So this is where he says that now I am a non-competitor, and he actually declares to all the different forces and saying that I am not even competing with you guys for your position, because the person who has come to this spiritual knowledge is considered to be a highly exalted person and can get very exalted positions in the universe. And he says, I'm not interested in any of the positions, I only want self-knowledge. So that lifestyle is something which is allowed by the Vedas. Now, somebody may think that self-knowledge is something which is going to give me the final freedom that I am searching for, and Atma is already free from action. If I want to understand that, then the more conducive lifestyle is what?
Sannyasa.
Sannyasa, exactly. So this is what, in fact, even Arjuna kept implying. He kept saying that, if knowledge is going to lead to moksha, then why are you asking me to do these actions? He kept on going back and asking, and he saw the futility of performing actions, and he wanted to actually withdraw himself and take himself somewhere up in the mountain and pursue only spirituality. And Lord Krishna now tells him that this is really not the right choice for everyone. So the next verse is
right choice for everyone, or at all time?
No, he says for everyone. Okay. So here he says for whom? Because for some it may be, but not for all. So here he says, the next verse, the chapter 5, verse 6. He says, Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptumayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena digacchati. So here he is talking about sannyasi versus yoga yukta is karma yogi. Okay. So here he says, Hey Mahabaho, Arjuna, sanyasastu dukkham aptum ayogataha. Okay. So that means if you take sannyasa, it can give you a lot of pain. How? Okay. Generally you think that sannyasa means what is very easy, because you give up all roles. You don't have to go to work, you don't have colleagues, you don't have family to deal with. So you just sit and you study the books and so that's a very easy thing to do. So here, where is the dukkha coming from? Okay? The dukkha comes from the fact that if you prematurely take sannyasa, then what happens? That you have the mind which has those distortions. The mind has anger, which is latent, but it can anytime or any external situation can trigger that anger and you become angry. The mind still has not processed all the sadness. The mind may still have fears, right? So that means that you can't reprogram your mind overnight. It takes its own time, and if you don't give it an opportunity to live in the world, come to know which are my vulnerable areas and undo all those vulnerable areas by re-understanding the situations with a different understanding altogether. Unless you do that, then what happens? You are stuck with the mind, and now you have taken sannyasa. So what will happen? You think that you are escaping from the world, but there is no escape. Okay? In fact, this is where we see so many scandals among sannyasis, right? They have prematurely given everything up. They still have very much interested in what?
Power, siddhi, what
absolutely. Powers, siddhi, sometimes a physical attraction, all these problems continue to happen, and sometimes to a higher degree.
Extreme extent.
Yeah, extreme. Because they have not what? taken care of all these things that one has to be mature. So this is where Lord Krishna says that running away from the world is not a solution at all. Because if you run away, then don't think that even if you play only one role of a teacher, even there, all your problems will start manifesting. You may get attracted to somebody, you may find somebody rich in your thing, so you'll be after him for money. So all same problems that happen to anybody else, they happen. And this is something which is so true, because in our batch, they've all become sannyasis, right? The minute they meet each other, the first thing is how many students you have. Have you built an ashram or not? So exactly, they are all, and before it's like which job do you have, and how, whatever. So now it is like, okay, have you built an ashram already or not? So that is like a big thing for success, right? That means you have money, you have followers, otherwise you are living in one small little apartment, so you are nobody. And then it's the same how many students you have. So people still start comparing you, comparing each other, and there are same problems but different vocabulary.
Even after 3 years it's
After 3.5 years, Jagdish, it's so difficult to change human mind. Okay? And unless you want to change, I tell you, you just hide behind the vision of Vedanta. Because Vedanta says Atma is already free. Atma is limitless. So then they think that this particular aspect of their personality they don't need to deal with. And that is something which is dangerous. And this is exactly what Lord Krishna is saying, that if you prematurely leave everything by saying, oh, Atma is free, you are going to get nowhere. Because neither you will understand the final reality about yourself. Because in order to really understand, you need a mind which is not projecting mind. A mind which is projecting in small things cannot totally capture this reality without any projection of one's own. Okay? So neither you understand that, nor you give yourself an opportunity to grow, and then you assume a role of a leader. And once you become a leader, then what happens? You always have some followers, and then the whole abusive relationship starts. Because then you are in the position of power. And people have a lot of shraddha in you. People come, because you are a spiritual leader, they think you are teaching Gita, you are teaching Upanishads, so they think that you are highly exalted, and you set yourself up in a situation where you actually have those minds in your control, and people abuse. And it's not that all of them are bad, please understand.
No.
Right?
There are aspects which are bad.
Exactly. So, sometimes we judge people and we always kind of make the whole person as, oh, this
that
person
one
is
part.
Exactly. That one part, we blow it out of proportion and we say this person is like that. And that's why we also make some, you said, oh, you're listening to Gita for so long and you're still like this.
This is exactly what my wife tells me. You go for Gita, there's no change in this.
So isn't you saying that if Arjun was having a war against strangers, and then if he would have said this, it would mean something different?
No, because when we studied the Gita, the first, when Arjuna is talking about why he did not want to fight, the first reaction is what you are saying, that I have my cousins who are opposite and I see only my own people. But that's not where his analysis ended. What he said is that even the other people, right? So I have to kill them.
Yeah.
So that means the major destruction I have to undertake. The third thing he said is that what will be the society after the war is over, when women and children are just without any father. And the fourth is that if I am the one who uses one's free will to undertake this action for my own benefit, what would be the result for me? So this whole implication of karma. Okay? So he gives many different reasons, not only the fact that they are his cousins. So his analysis, that was the first point, and after that he shows various reasons why he did not want to fight.
Does this show my state of mind, me asking this question? That's what I asked you. Does that imply something about my state of mind when I am asking this question? It's a natural question if you've not heard Gita before.
Yeah.
So what I asked you is a natural question,
Yeah,
or
it's a very natural
implies
question.
my
Exactly.
state of mind?
No, it's a very natural question. I mean, many people have this question, right? So it is, yeah. So here he's saying that for anybody, because this is not something, Arjuna of course was saying that why are you asking me to do this kind of an action? But even then he said that leaving is not at all a solution. Because if you fight for the kingdom, for your pleasure, then it's a very ordinary one. But if you fight for the righteousness, to re-establish righteousness and somehow remove the king who is highly corrupt, then that is a dharma yuddha. It is no longer a thing fought with your personal agenda. Okay? So that's what makes the difference. So this is where we also see the action could be the same, but the intention makes all the difference. Okay? The same war, if Arjuna had fought just for his own power, taking a revenge, it would have been a very different type of a war. Just settling, this personal agenda. But if it is for dharma, then it is dharma yuddha. And he has to see the fact that he is placed in this situation where only he can oppose. Otherwise, Duryodhana was too powerful. Nobody was in a position to oppose him. But he was. And if he doesn't rise up to the occasion and do what needs to be done, then it actually is something where he's not following dharma. So,
I just had a sort of question about where we are in the larger picture. So, are we still with Brahma Vidya, or have we moved on to Yoga Shastra or Brahma Sutra and we have moved on to Yoga Shastra? Because this is the Karma Yoga seems to be getting towards that. And have we also talked about the relationship between Atma and God?
Yeah. So see, very good question. So what all we have seen, because you are right, some people miss some classes and then they miss. So people don't know how this whole Gita is progressing. So this is a good time because we are like halfway now, only halfway, right? But in fact, today there are not only 20 verses, there are 45, 46 verses. That's why it's taking much longer. Okay. So now, where did we start with? Let's go a little bit back and see what all we have covered so far. Okay. We started with Arjuna's question, and what he had two types of questions. One was the fundamental question, which is what will solve this problem of sorrow? Whether I fight the war or if I don't fight the war, I don't see any solution to the sorrow that I feel. And that's when he realizes that all the accomplishments that he has achieved so far is not solving his problem of what I am the dukhi. Okay? And that's why he wants that knowledge which will solve this problem. But in addition to that, he also wanted to know what to do in this particular situation, whether he should fight or not. So he asked Lord Krishna two questions. Where did Lord Krishna start to answer? He started by answering a bigger picture. Okay? What is the solution to a human sorrow? And that is by knowing the true nature of Atma. Okay? The true nature of Atma, when you know, he says there is no sorrow. Now, generally people think that, oh, no sorrow means a psychological being of stopping the sorrow. But here he is talking at a very different level. He shows what is the nature of Atma. He shows that Atma is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So that is Satyam, Jnanam, Anandam. So that we did this whole analysis of Druk and Drishya. Everything which is seen is not I, and I don't take on the attributes of something which is seen by me. Okay? So therefore, now everything else is an object, I don't have any problem, but body and mind, I think is I. So he says, actually it belongs to Drishya category. Okay? It is seen by you, different conditions of the body and mind are seen by you. So you are never taking on the attributes of body and mind. So then Atma is, what is it? It is awareness. Now if that awareness, is it a pocket of awareness or is it something which is one undivided awareness? For understanding that, we saw the example of space. Okay? The space is something which does not take any attribute of either the glass, nor it takes the attribute of what is inside it. It is always free and it is one undivided. So I will not go through the whole logic because we've seen it several times, right? So similarly, Atma seems to be confined to the physical body, seems to be taking on the characteristics of the mind, but pervading it, it is free from it, right? So then you may think that now there are two things. One is Drik, which is Atma, which is awareness, which is pervading everything, and the other is what? Drishya, which is an object of awareness, which includes what? Which includes time, space and every object. Okay? Then we came up with another concept by the verse Nasato vidyate bhavaha na bhavo vidyate sataha. Okay? He shows that actually this object of awareness is asat. Asat means what we understood is mithya. Right? So that means everything, any object that you see is actually form within form, within form, within form, and you don't have any final, you don't find any final building block from which the whole universe has come about. So this is where Vedanta walks in and says that the final form, right, is not even a real form. Even the physicist will tell you, it's just a concept. Okay? And what it says is, this awareness is the truth of that concept. Because what is the relationship? The relationship between concept and awareness you can understand in your mind. Okay? Any concept, can it exist without awareness? No. But awareness, does it need concept to exist? No. Okay? So this is the basic relationship between awareness and concept. So now we have come to a very huge understanding that everything depends upon awareness for its existence, and awareness is independently existing. Awareness is the only satyam, everything else is mithya. Okay? So that means you are indeed satyam, jnanam, anantam. Anantam means limitless, and limitless can only be one. Because if there are two objects, then what? One object limits the other. Even if one is very big and the other one is very small, if that small is totally independent of that very big, it will still limit it. Okay? And the limitless also cannot have any attributes. Because if it has one attribute, it cannot have what? The other attribute. If it is only Ananda, it cannot be what?
Dukh.
Yeah. So that means it has to contain both and it is free from both. Because mithya, the characteristic of mithya does not touch satya. Okay? So the characteristic of the table, which has a certain height, which has a certain length, it has a certain width, all that, does it at any given point in time become the characteristic of the wood? No. Okay? This is pervading it, it is free from it. Right? So when we are talking about transcending, we are not talking about physically separating. Please understand. Pervading it, it is free. And this is what is the nature of awareness. It pervades everything, but everything depends upon it. Itself is free from everything. And in that, it gives as though all these different varieties and different attributes and different qualities makes it possible for this world of forms to come about, itself never gets affected. Okay? So knowing this, the wise person is free. Okay? And is free from shoka, because I am, where is the person moving from? From this little individual who has to constantly manipulate the world to suit one's likes, or constantly manipulate the mind for it to be the way it has to be. Okay? To the person, what does the person understand? That I am the truth of the whole universe. Everything depends upon me for its existence. It's a total paradigm shift. Right? As Jagdish says, this is an ultimate out-of-box thinking. Okay? So this is what the person understands. Then the next question Lord Krishna has to answer, what do I do now? Okay, now this is some reality which I need to understand about my true nature, but what do I do now? So this is where Lord Krishna talks about Karma Yoga. Okay? And what does he talk about Karma Yoga? He says that first, Karma Yoga is a technical term. Karma Yoga is a lifestyle. Okay? Now, what is a lifestyle? First he gave the verse Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha gurunandana bahushakha anantascha buddhayo avyavasayana. Okay, so that is that was the first verse when he starts talking about Karma Yoga. Okay? And the first verse, what he says is, what makes a Karma Yogi is not the person who is ethical. A person who is ethical is an ethical person, is a good person. But to qualify as a Karma Yogi, there has to be a Nishchayatmika Buddhi. What is a Nishchayatmika Buddhi? That my normal pursuit of Artha, Dharma and Kama will not give me the satisfaction that I am searching for. That is the first understanding. Okay? So the person becomes, in Sanskrit, let's use Sanskrit words because they are very precise. Okay? The person becomes Mumukshu. Mumukshu is Moktum Ichuhu. Moktum Ichuhu means everybody actually is looking for freedom alone. Behind all one's pursuit, everybody is looking for freedom, but people are searching through the pursuits of what? Artha, Dharma and Kama. Now the person understands that the normal pursuits of Artha, Dharma and Kama is not going to give me the freedom that I am
Even
searching.
Dharma is not.
Even Dharma. Because Dharma, sometimes that's why in the Vedic vision, Dharma and Moksha are two different pursuits. They are not the same pursuit.
Dharma is righteousness and Moksha is freedom.
Moksha is free, knowing Atma to be already free. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That is a different pursuit. Okay?
But then what Krishna is advising is do your Dharma.
Yeah, that's true. Because you need Dharma. You can't totally
So that
disregard Dharma.
That is a path towards Moksha.
Exactly. Exactly. This is Karma Yoga. Absolutely. You use Karma, right, for Antakarana Shuddhi. We will use the terms, right, so that you become ready for Moksha. So there is no shortcut. Absolutely. Right? Even though Atma is already free, you have to go through this. Right? So this is where Karma Yoga. So now the person has understood that Moksha is what I am looking for, and Moksha is different from Dharma. Okay? Dharma is just being ethical. When I'm, when I'm going to work, I'm ethical. When I'm dealing with my family, I'm ethical. When I'm dealing with my friends, I don't hurt them. So this is what we call, that is a good human being. But may not be a mumukshu, may not want to know the reality of the nature of I. So that is two different categories. Okay? So Dharma is...
But how can you follow the path of Dharma if you're... How are the two things
independent? Yeah, this is what Karma Yoga is. So first let's understand what is the Nishchayatmika Buddhi of this Karma Yogi. Please understand, because all this will come. Right? So first is, he is a mumukshu. Now, for that freedom, Artha, Dharma and Kama, the person, even though you are most dharmic person, you at times still feel like a loser. That happens to many people. Okay? It doesn't mean that you are totally free or anything.
True.
In fact, at times you are more dissatisfied because you see people who are not
all my life
Dharma.
I've done the right thing.
Yeah, this is a typical thing. All my life I've done the right thing, and look at me, I've got nowhere, and look at others. They are driving BMWs and they are having big houses, and I've got nowhere. So that means you can actually be highly dissatisfied. Or when you see somebody doing something wrong, you can be very angry. You can be a very angry person. You can have social reformers who can be highly dissatisfied.
Yes.
Right? Because they try to make an impact. They go to a village and nobody follows all their dreams, these wonderful dreams they have. The politicians start opposing, the village head will start opposing, even the so-called beneficiaries will not see the value for changing the way the person sees, right? Then the person is what? All frustrated, because the person feels that I have all the good intentions, I've given up my life for the benefit of people, and look at this. So many people are opposing.
This is what mothers say to children sometimes. I've done so much for you. You are not grateful.
Yeah. So that means dharma does not necessarily make you a happy person. And this is exactly what Arjuna also realized. He had a great sense of dharma, but that did not make him a happy person. So that's what he was saying, I want Shreyas. Shreyas is a different pursuit. Okay?
Shreyas
So
and moksha are different.
No, Shreyas is moksha.
Oh.
Right? So
What is Shreyas?
Shreyas and Preyas are two different
Preyas,
terms.
you are being-
Preyas is Artha, Dharma, Kama pursuit, and Shreyas, which will give you the highest.
Moksha.
And that is moksha. Literally it means something which is the best, Shrestha.
Shrestha.
Shrestha. That is the best for you. That is the freedom. And that is what now you are seeking, and through self-knowledge. Because the nature of Atma is such that you are the goal. Okay? A dharmic person does not know that reality, and he may not even be pursuing that reality. Right? So, this is Nishchayatmika Buddhi. Then the next question comes as to, if I am searching for the freedom, what will give me the freedom? Okay? So that's where within the spiritual world there are so many options. Which one will I choose? So this is where there is another logic in Nishchayatmika Buddhi. That if I am basically a limited person, if I am this little individual, I am totally insignificant. Okay? Some practices I do, some actions I do, even if I call them spiritual, how long is this body going to last? Okay? And what is the nature of mind? It is highly limited. You can't, it can only do a few things, and even the emotions that we try to reprogram itself, we find it so difficult to reprogram ourselves. So if I'm basically limited, I'm stuck with my limitation. Any spiritual practice which starts with a starting point that you are limited and you have to do something to free yourself does not get you anywhere. Because it's exactly like before, right? Instead of Artha, it is now some other practice. But the thing is that the reality about your being limited remains a fact for them. Okay? Now, this is where Vedanta says the only possibility for your search for freedom is that you are already free. Because if you are basically limited, then you are stuck with your nature. You can't do anything about it. You just have to learn to live with it. Okay? So that's where the starting point of Veda is Aham Brahma Asmi. Ayam Atma Brahma. This is a starting point. And it is present tense. You are.
So, one question I have is, you are saying that that your body and mind and chit, all that is limited, is a given.
Yeah.
And but your awareness, your Atma is free.
Yes.
So, should your Atma be happy if my behavior is anything?
No. This is why you need Karma Yoga. That's why. But Nishchayatmika Buddhi, you
so
first
then
need to recognize.
the ultimate destination is for a man who is very at peace with himself and at with the
You
world.
need to have that relative composure. And this is exactly what Karma Yoga is. So that's exactly, it comes to that.
I think that is a secondary outcome though. The primary outcome is that you realize Atma.
Yes.
You realize your Shreyas, not your praise. The fact that you will be at peace with yourself is a secondary outcome.
Correct. But the point is, how do I recognize that this person is
you have to recognize yourself. You don't have to recognize
even
others.
if I recognize myself, and if my behavior is inhuman,
it cannot be.
It cannot be.
Exactly.
Probably.
That's what he's saying. So that's why that's why he's saying Sannyasastu Mahabaho Dukkham Aptum Ayogataha. Right? He says if you leave everything for this self-knowledge, and if you don't address all your issues, then you will wasting your life. That's why Karma Yoga is very important. So this is why we are saying what placing knowledge and the karma in its right place is Karma Yoga. Okay? So let's just finish the logic. Sorry?
The
placing, what is the place of knowledge and what is the place of karma? What is the right place of each one of them is what makes it into a karma yoga. Okay? So now, from a mumukshu, once I recognize that Atma is free and I need to know my true nature, then I become from mumukshu to a jignasu. Jignasu is natum ichu. Mumukshu is moktum ichu. I am interested in my freedom, which cannot be achieved through artha, dharma and kama. Now for that freedom, I need to know my true nature. Because if I am basically limited, there is no solution. So that means the starting point, the only possibility is I am already free. If I am already free, why do I feel that I am limited? Because I don't know the true nature of Atma. So the primary pursuit of life becomes what? Knowledge of I, which is what we call jignasu. In Sanskrit there is a term.
So what is the difference
Jignasu.
between mumukshu and jignasu?
Because a mumukshu is looking for freedom, but the person has not yet ascertained that
How
to. Exactly.
And
That
jigna is also
No, Jignasu has understood that self-knowledge will lead to the freedom, so therefore exposes oneself to the Vedas and Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, which give you the self-knowledge. So that means
so mumukshu is desire and jignasu is following a path.
Yeah, mumukshu it is a technical term. If you understand the Sanskrit,
Desire
it
for
means
freedom. No?
Moktum ichuhu. Icha
Yeah.
is the one who desires freedom.
Freedom.
Okay. What is a jignasu? Natum ichuhu. Okay. The one who desires what? Knowledge, because now the person has understood that moksha that I am looking for can only be gained through knowledge of myself. So that means you have refined your search. Because otherwise, in the spiritual world, there are many practices. And you think that, okay, you are not pursuing artha, dharma and kama, but so many different meditation practices, energy movements. There are so many different options, right? In the spiritual world, so-called spiritual world. And people are, all these so many different practices. Seeing the lights and getting absorption. So there are all kinds of things that are happening.
So Nishchayatmika buddhi is to select the right path, or
Yeah, so that means that one has done all this analysis. The one has now seen that normal pursuit of artha, dharma, kama does not give me what I am searching for. That's the first stage.
Step.
The person has also seen the second step. If that does not, then what does? Okay. Now, none of these spiritual practices will give me what I'm really looking for. The only possibility is that I'm already free. So that means the person has even completed the second step and is now pursuing knowledge.
So jnana yoga and karma yoga are related in the sense that
Yeah, exactly.
you have to do
Yes.
both simultaneously.
Yes.
Where does bhakti yoga come in this?
So
That
now
will be
let's,
later.
no, because exactly. Let's follow. Yeah, exactly. Everything cannot be all in one class. Everything all together, right? So we just are revising a little bit what we have seen so far.
And you will get it. It'll go bumper for me if it doesn't. What I got is that when you know you are free, the struggle is out, and you learn about yourself. It's easier to learn about yourself.
See, what we are doing now is,
You can concentrate on that.
now we are just saying, initially there were two questions. Please understand how Gita is progressing. Because Gita doesn't progress in the way that you want to know the answers. It progresses in its
Step by
own way and it shows different things. So please understand how Lord Krishna is progressing to what is the question and how he is progressing, right? Because we have curiosity about everything and we want to find out everything, but Lord Krishna has his own way of explaining, right? So this is where first he says what is the nature of Atma, okay? Then the second question of Arjuna was what should I do now?
What should I do?
Right? So for that he says that leaving everything is not the solution. So you have to be staying there and do the actions. But what makes you a karma yogi is the following. Okay, the first verse was talking about Nishchayatmika Buddhi. Okay, Nishchayatmika Buddhi is that yes, knowledge of Atma will give me the freedom. Okay, now does that then mean I leave everything? No. So here he says that Nishchayatmika Buddhi has to then, the karma, what is now the place of karma? Knowledge will give me moksha, what is the place of karma? That you have to ask and you need to answer to become a karma yogi. Okay? The karma yogi is who understands that if I perform karma, if I continue to engage in the world, even though the final freedom will come from knowledge, when I continue to perform my actions in the world, what will it do? All the problems or all my distortions with which I have been living my life, they will all start surfacing. Okay? Different situations will trigger different kind of a distortion in my mind. Now, before, what happened? My distortion seemed like reality, right? Whatever I thought, I felt it was right. Now, what will be my attitude? I said, my God, I have all these projections, and that I am not seeing things exactly as they are. So once you become aware of the fact that your mind has a tendency to go on a tangent, what will you do? You will correct it, right? So karma yoga gives you that opportunity to first recognize where are your distortions, which are your vulnerable points, and then what? You correct it. That whole process where you now place karma for what? Antahkarana Shuddhi. Antahkarana Shuddhi means I need to become the person who is deserving of knowledge. The laws are such that this knowledge will never take place until I have preparation. Okay? And preparing the mind that it becomes a non-projecting mind, a non-distorted mind is something without which I cannot understand the final reality. I just will repeat it like a parrot without really understanding it. Okay? So karma becomes the means for, as Malai was saying, a secondary means, because without that karma enables me to have the right kind of mind. Without that kind of a mind, knowledge will not take place. So the primary means is the pursuit, knowing the nature of Atma, listening to Shastra and seeing again and again what is the nature of reality of Atma. Okay? The secondary means is what? Preparing the mind so that it can understand this final reality about oneself. So once all these problems of fears, anxiety, stress, frustration, all this a person has accumulated over a period of time, and one is totally entangled with it, right? And to undo all of that takes time. And Karma Yoga is meant for that. Okay? Now, there are two different aspects of Karma Yoga which will enable you to give up so many of these entanglements. Okay? So, there are two major, when we perform karma and we receive actions, we have two major problems, right? One is guilt and the second is hurt. Guilt and hurt. Okay? Guilt, Upanishads are saying there is kimaham sadhuna karavam, kimaham papam akaravam. If you take yourself to be a doer and you have been performing actions, everybody has some regret. Why did I not do the right thing? Right? Or why did I do something which was hurting somebody? This is something which is there for everyone, guilt. And the second is what? Hurt. Somebody, why did that person do this to me? Okay? So a human being is highly bruised in some way, and with that one continues to live in the world. And with that either you feel that the world is, when you have generalizations, it's not just your personal guilt and hurt, but it actually becomes a worldview. Either you think that the world is unfair, okay, and things are so bad, and this is an orientation that you get, and with that orientation you start seeing every situation. So that itself is one distortion. The second distortion is I'm no good, I'm a failure, because I can't always manipulate the world in a way that I want it to. So that means many things don't go my way. So that means I have also this feeling of I'm no good, right? So that means that everybody has either this feeling of a victim, unfair world, generalized view of the world, or low self-esteem. All this you have to undo, because knowledge cannot take place in a mind which is afflicted by all these different opinions, which are like so created by one's own understanding of the world rather than what the world is. Okay? So you need to re-understand the world. You need to re-understand everything. So that is, there are two aspects of karma. The first verse, the second verse, which is talking about karma yoga, is to understand the relationship between what is within your choice and what is not within your choice. So the famous verse is Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. This is something which is a statement of fact. It's not that Lord Krishna is giving an advice that you perform an action and forget about result. He's not giving an advice. He's just saying that you have choice over action. You can do it, you need not do it, and you can do it differently. Okay? But when it comes to result, then the result is not in your hand. Because if the result was in your hand, there will never be something called failure. Everybody will get exactly what they want. So that means the results are not in your hand. If the results are not in your hand, then how will you live with this in this world? So the next verse was talking about samatvam yoga uchyate. Okay? So when results are not in your hand, what happens? That when things happen your way, you are happy. When things don't happen your way, what happens?
Happiness.
You are highly unhappy, right? Either what? You blame somebody, or you blame the world, or you think, oh, I'm no good, and you pity yourself. So there are all these problems that happen, and then again people think that Lord Krishna is giving an advice to Arjuna that have certain composure when the results come. He is not giving an advice. He is pointing out another very important fact. Okay? The important fact that he is pointing out is that this result, which are not in your hand, you need to ask one more question. If I don't control how these results are brought about, you need to ask this question. Okay? Are things random? If things were random, you will have no understanding as to, if I want to achieve this, I am going to do this, because things are random. Okay? So there is no planning, there is no any human will, because things just happen whatever way. But that's not any one of us understanding. You teach strategy. What do you teach? If this is what you want to accomplish, this is what you do. So that means implicitly we understand that there is a cause and effect relationship. We understand this. Okay? So this is where it says that the results are not in your hand, but they are not random. They are taken care of by what? The cause and effect relationship. The cause and any law of cause and effect, does it begin for 50 years or 100 years? How far are the laws which cause this tree to be what it is? How far can you go with those laws?
Time immemorial.
Yeah, along with the creation are these laws. You don't put a time period to these laws. Okay? So similarly, anything that happens to my life right now in form of a result or a situation is not random. It's connected to what? The laws of cause and effect. The laws of cause and effect don't have any time period. No law has a specific time period of 50 or 100 years. Show me one law. Okay? And this is where you understand that when I look from my limited knowledge, everything looks what? All skewed. Okay? But if you increase the time frame of how the laws operate, then within that there is what? Everything follows a certain cause and effect relationship. If this is the fact, then when things don't happen my way, I don't go into what? Blaming the world, this whole tendency of what? Blaming the world or what? Blaming myself. I free myself of this burden that I take on my shoulders, and world becomes very heavy for me, because we all have to deal with many situations which don't go our way. And for every time, if you carry this burden, you are a highly burdened person. And if you are so loaded, then what? Are you in a position to use your free will to the fullest extent? So that means we complain and we spend so much time dissatisfied with whatever is happening, and we don't spend enough time proactively doing what we can. So this is what Lord Krishna is saying. Samatva means first when you understand that the laws are taking care of the cause and effect relationship, I cannot really blame myself and blame others, but because they are following, I can say, what can I do now to achieve the result that I want? Identify what? More proactively. Okay? So free those energies of frustration into what? More proactive thinking. Of if this is the result I want, what did I miss out? What other variables can I add to get what I'm looking for? This is a constructive use. So that means the first step is Samatvam means you now within the cause and effect you try to understand how it works and then navigate your life within those laws. Your life becomes so much easier because you don't spend time being dissatisfied.
Samatvam basically means balance. Right?
So there is a certain composure, but that composure is not just because, oh, I should be composed. It's from understanding that the laws are infallible in nature. That's a fact. Okay, it's not every statement of Bhagavad Gita is converted into an advice. But actually Lord Krishna is giving statement of facts. He's a teacher.
Not to console yourself.
Yeah.
But as a recognition of the deeper reality.
Exactly.
So I say I am
absolutely. Yes.
Then also I am consoling myself.
Yeah, because now then you will say, what can I do differently? Right? You're not blaming anyone, and you're not even saying that, oh, I'm bad or anything. You're saying, yeah, these causes were not enough. So now which are the other causes that I add to get what I want?
This is comes out very well in classical musicians. If the audience is wrong, the response is going to be indifferent, and that the singer has to recognize that he is with the wrong audience and he has to change the audience.
Yeah.
So that unless you are composed, otherwise you will go mad. आजकल का ज़माने में कुछ समझता नहीं है.
Exactly. You need to cultivate that.
Can you say this analogy?
Sorry.
All are trying to get admission in SPJIMR for PGDM course.
Yeah.
But level of institute will not come to your level. You have to rise to that level. That is what it means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you don't, then instead of just complaining
then what?
How will
find
you?
another institute.
You have to find another institute.
It is neither fault of institute nor of the world.
Absolutely. So this is what
You are
proactiveness. Always now, what are my options? How much can I go?
Yes.
Should I do more? We are not proactive. We just get caught in our whole framework and complain and that vicious circle and dissatisfaction, and we are caught in that framework.
So we don't create baggage.
So you don't create baggage. That's exactly Karma Yoga. You free yourself from all these baggage.
Thanks for the word console. Because others always get stuck in ego and this, that. But this word console is perfect. Like, he said, and we are consoling ourselves. So I was stuck there, I am responsible. Then again I go into that tangent
that
of
other,
work and
that you now are no
yeah.
good and things like that. No, it is just that now this cause was not appropriate, right? So then you are not even putting a self-condemnation or anything, right? You are freeing yourself.
Or I don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
So
and then
therefore
you
let me do
choose,
something else.
Let me do something else because you have abilities, you have skills, you have many things, and we just get caught and we don't explore things, with certain freedom.
You calibrate your action.
Yeah.
Or recalibrate it.
Yeah, exactly.
You see opportunity is
Exactly.
Also at a different level acceptance of the result.
Yeah.
Sometimes all the causes may not be
Yeah,
enough. I must accept
exactly.
what comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in spite of many things, they may not
Things
still
will-
happen,
yeah.
and then I don't know. So that means
Nothing
I have tried,
I accept.
and then I feel
accept
good
what
about
comes
at
my
least I have tried, and then there are laws which are unfathomable.
And I
right?
receive pleasantly
So that-
whatever comes.
Exactly.
My problem is that
So-
I am willing to accept things don't going my way, but I can't stop being happy if they go my way. So that is also to
so
be.
that you're happy is something very natural. There's not
No,
a
but then
problem.
that is not.
If-
Then you, I am giving credit to myself. No, if I am
No.
happy.
See, you're right that there is another thing that one has to realize, that we think that only when things don't go our way, only that is a problem.
Exactly.
But actually,
For me, the other side is a problem.
even when things go your way, it can be problematic.
It
Why?
is.
Okay? Because at times you become highly conceited,
Yes.
right? You think that you're somebody, all the success belongs to you. You become arrogant. You become, that you become condescending towards others. How many people in
Or
power?
complacent.
Yeah, or exactly. So that you don't do enough. So there are so many other problems. So that means to get the right perspective to life is the most important thing. We go from one tangent to the other.
Yes.
And human mind is so vulnerable. You try to get rid of this and you will take another.
Either you are miserable or you are
Exactly.
ecstatic.
Absolutely. Even that ecstatic doesn't last for too
For
long.
2 minutes.
So you then try to recreate and you're struggling like anything. So our whole life goes in some catering to our, catering to our distortions rather
Yes.
than knowing the realities and realigning our life to it. And Karma Yoga is the whole process of realigning our life to what is and re-understanding and doing what needs to be done. Okay? So the second aspect, Nishchayatmika Buddhi, Karmani Eva Adhikaraste, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, and Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam. That was the fourth thing that Karma Yoga meant. Okay? What is the Karmasu Kaushalam? That yes, I can say that whatever comes to my, whatever comes, which comes from the order, so you can't be complacent because what? There is Karmasu Kaushalam. Where do you have a free will with reference
To
to the
increase
choice?
your kaushan.
Exactly. That means when you perform an action, you have to use discretion. Okay?
You have to use-
So you have to use your free will, and in order to use your free will adequately, what do you need to have? You need to have certain discretion. You have to be able to discriminate what is the right action, what is not the right action. So how does one use one's free will appropriately? And this is where we had a whole discussion of what dharma, universal ethical values, and we saw the value of following values and what is the loss if you don't follow the values. Okay, we saw there were a couple of classes based on showing the value of values. What are the consequences? If you don't follow the values, then what are the consequences? You have feeling of guilt, kimaham sadhana karvam, then what else? Low self-esteem, then fear of being caught, then over the period you think that others also may just not follow the values, so you become suspicious, non-trusting, then what? It starts manifesting in your health, in your whole outlook. So these are all the causes to not follow the values. So dharma does come in. But dharma comes in not just for the sake of dharma, but for what? Antakarana shuddhi. That is the difference.
Prepare your
It is preparing your mind so that it can understand the final reality about oneself. Okay? So that was the fourth verse of the Karma Yoga. So this is where Lord Krishna says, even though knowledge gives you the moksha, you cannot bypass this growth process. So Karma Yoga.
Well, you won't
becomes
get knowledge
the means.
unless you are exposed to different things, and that is why you have to follow the path of action.
No, just
It
for
gives you the
being
opportunity
happy.
for
That's the
Antakaran
opportunity
Shuddhi.
to learn.
Antakaran Shuddhi.
Yes.
Yes, learn, but to free your mind of distortions.
Exactly, because everybody
Yeah.
has been performing millions of karmas, but it doesn't mean that
So
they have.
distortion is lack of knowledge,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yes.
So to gain that knowledge, you have to go into a context. If you want to know the forest, you have to enter the forest. No?
Yes,
Bahar se nahi
but
samajhna.
what I think Nima was just saying is that throughout our lives we have been blindly in the forest groping around, doing action, and it has just been creating more and more distortions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you are going in with this attitude of jigyasu, you begin to get and you listen to the shastras, then you start freeing your mind of an antakaran shuddhi, and then your mind is just ready to receive that knowledge.
Excellent, excellent. That's exactly what Karma Yoga is. Absolutely perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that was very well said.
Did you submit yourself?
No, we are not talking about submitting. We are re-understanding the world, right? We are not talking about submitting and who are we submitting to and why
Your
should we
knowledge,
submit.
you are.
But see, you are acquiring a different way of looking at things, which is more based on what is rather than what you are used to creating. Generally, what happens when things don't happen your way? What happens? You are disappointed, you are blaming yourself or blaming the world. Now, what is Lord Krishna teaching you? Yeah, exactly. Is teaching you that there is a cause and effect relationship. Don't take all these unnecessary burdens. There, it is. But then, if it is a cause and effect relationship, then can I just sit back? No, because your action is the cause. So what you do right now is going to
Have an effect. Shape the effect.
is going to be result into an effect, right? So you, because there is a cause and effect relationship, what comes to me right now is not out of that. So you have certain samatvam, but because that relationship exists, you use your free will to what? Perform actions, and that action has to be what? Following dharma. Because otherwise, if you don't follow dharma, there is a cost. And that cost, how it will manifest in the future, you don't know. So when somebody is seeing the future and they don't know the cause, they feel, why are you suffering? That suffering is unnecessary because they don't know the causes. But who runs the cause and effect? Not you, but the laws.
You are against laws.
Right? So this is where now it gives you an opportunity, as Manai very rightly said, to undo all these distortions, all these wrong understanding that we have, which is leading to further entanglement and lot of suffering. You have an opportunity to undo all of that through karma, continuing to do karma but re-understanding.
So
the
distortion is a given in
The
the sense that
distortion is a
the
fact.
is a fact.
Yeah. So you need
the
to
act of
undo.
growing up, distortion happens.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
In the act of growing up, distortion is there for everyone.
Yes.
And that undoing
Undoing that is your
distortion
job.
Is a job.
That's the karma yoga.
Exactly, that is karma yoga. Absolutely. Because unless you undo that, final knowledge will not take place. This is also the order. Order ensures that you are a deserving recipient.
So
of this
in a way,
knowledge.
you're born blank,
Yes.
neither this nor that. Then distortions start happening,
Yeah.
and then you're grown up. Now you have to remove the distortion.
Remove them. Exactly. Absolutely. Right? And you also need to then pursue the knowledge. Then there was another aspect of karma yoga which was talked about, because up to now we only saw when I perform an action, I take into consideration law of dharma, because if I don't, there is a cost. Okay? And when I receive the result, instead of loading myself with all the problems of feeling like a victim or whatever, I understand that the laws are taken care. So I take off the load from myself. Okay. Now the third aspect, which was another very important aspect that Lord Krishna talked about, is yajna. Yajna means he now makes you see the creation in a totally different manner. Generally, you think that you are an isolated human being and you have to what? Fight for manipulating the universe in a way that you want it to. What it shows you is that this universe is like a yajna. Each part is what? Connected to the other part with this impeccable what? Precision. Okay? You are made to see the fact, the way you are connected to the sun, the way you are connected to the water, the way you are connected to all the different human beings. So that means the forces are making your life possible, and what you do today, you working within a whole grand system, and that shapes the world for tomorrow. So don't take yourself to be this isolated person and just kind of struggling to fight in the world. Take yourself as one of the very important shaper of this world. So this is where, in fact, in this whole, there is a Western music and there is a symphony, and different artists, what are they doing? They are playing different instruments and at different times. So in order for the whole system to work, each one has to play one's own part. Okay? Synchronize. And when there is a synchronicity, what happens? The whole system, there is harmony. And if there is one person going out, then what happens? You disturb the whole harmony. So that means every action that is done on my part, by me, which disturbs the overall harmony, is what?
Adharma.
It's adharma. So you have to look at it from a much bigger standpoint. Okay? And anything that I do to enhance that harmony, okay, that is what? It is a big dharma. So this is where I become a contributor. Just not this person who's just being ethical in a limited sense. I become the person who sees oneself as connected to the whole universe. I'm part of one whole grand system called yajna, which is going on. Okay? I recognize my responsibility and I become a contributor. That way I grow as a human being. I don't define my life with this very narrow goals. Okay? That is where this whole thing about, doing something proactive for the society, for the nation, for the community, for all that comes into that Karma Yoga, because it gives you an opportunity to grow as a human being. Okay? So that is another aspect of Karma Yoga. Now, having said all these different aspects of Karma Yoga, what happens is, Arjuna asks this, Lord Krishna tells that this knowledge that I am giving you about the nature of I and the means to get it is something which is not right now created by me. Okay? He says that there is this Guru Shishya Parampara which has been going on for a very long time. Okay? So here he says that Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanam Amapyayam Vivasvad Manave Praha Manamu Ikshvaku Praved Pravit. Okay? So that means all this this whole knowledge is a parampara. Parampara means it's a lineage
Tradition.
of student and teacher. And every teacher was once a student, right? And then what? Becomes a teacher and starts imparting this knowledge, and this is how this whole tradition is going. Okay? So therefore, again, this has a very major implication, because any teacher who comes to you and says, I was sitting under the tree and now I'm enlightened and I'm going to tell you, you the ignorant one, doesn't know what the whole tradition is. Not that. A traditional teacher will never assume what? This whole all-important role of I'm the one who started this or I'm the one who came across this. This is a teacher, the teacher who belongs to the tradition will actually salute to the tradition.
Yes.
There are verses which say, Sadashiva Samarambha, Shankaracharya Madhyama, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru Parampara. Okay. The teaching tradition starts with what? Sadashiva Samarambha. Okay. All of it with the Ishvara. The whole knowledge starts with Ishvara. Then comes what? What is the middle link? Shankaracharya. And up to our teacher, there is this whole lineage. And this is what he highlights. He also highlights a little bit about his particular role. Who is he? Who is so-called Lord Krishna? Avatara. So in order to understand what is Avatara, we also have to understand a little bit what is Ishvara. Okay? So then there was a discussion about what is Ishvara. The whole Gita, what we have seen so far, how it is proceeding. Because we look at only one part and then we forget about all the connection and how it proceeds to unfold things. Okay. And in order to understand Ishvara, we saw what? That first, the whole inquiry into Ishvara starts with, is there a cause of the universe? I think you were there last time, right? So we saw that when universe is so well put together, then it is much more plausible to think that there is a cause of the universe than to think that things are just, they just come. Okay? Now, if there is a cause of the universe, you have to ask a second question. And the second question is, what is the nature of the cause of the universe? Okay? In order to answer that, we look at two different types of causes. One is the efficient cause and the other one is the material cause. Okay? What is the efficient cause? The maker. And what is the material cause? So if somebody made this steel glass, the maker is the efficient cause and the steel is the material from which this glass is made. Okay? So in this case, there are two different causes. The maker is different from the material. But then we saw, in terms of the entire creation, can the maker be different than the material? Logically, it's not possible. Because if there was already material, you will ask who created that material using which this person created the world. So already the creation was there, right? So therefore, the only possibility is that Ishvara is both the maker as well as the material cause of the creation. Okay? Now, that gives us a totally different understanding of what is Ishvara. Because generally, we think that Ishvara is somebody who's remote, somebody who's away from us, some entity with some lot of power and a lot of knowledge, and then I'm at the mercy of that Ishvara. That is our orientation. Now, what is our understanding of Ishvara? Ishvara, if it is the material cause, it is pervading everything. If it is pervading everything, how will I see or understand this Ishvara? Because I only see forms. I don't see Ishvara. Okay? So this is where we revisit the Satya Mithya relationship and we understand one more fact. Okay? Everything is Mithya and it is a concept, true. Okay? But who has organized all these tiniest particles from a concept to these tiniest particles, and from these tiniest particles they are organized into different atoms, and in a way that different permutations and combinations can what? Create what? Galaxies,
Yes.
planets, stars,
And bacteria.
yeah, bacteria, amoeba, all different animals, birds, aquatic creatures, humans, mammals, everything. Okay, so that intelligence which gathers, puts together atoms and particles, which is the so-called the building block, right? That puts together at every level to make everything what is, and constantly governing its relationship of how it is going to behave through series of laws is what we call Ishvara. Sarvatyaha Sarvashaktiman Ishvara. Okay? So we understood that it is something which is everywhere. Right now, thousands of cells, billions of cells are coordinating different things so that I can talk, I can look at you all, I can hear the sound of the ocean, I can do all these things. My digestive system is working, my respiratory system is working, my circulatory system is working. The whole thing is what? Play of Ishvara. My neurons are ticking, everything is that intelligence, which is a very basic intelligence, okay, within which my little intelligence is. This is what is Ishvara. So that means now I understand the presence of Ishvara as everything. Okay. Now if that is the case, what is Avatara? Avatara is that this all knowledge and all power, within that everything is what? Governed through laws. So when we are born, we are subject to what? The law of karma. The past causes which produce this given body and this given mind. That's why the causes are different and therefore the bodies are different, the minds are different, the situations we go through are different. So that's what accounts for all the differences. Okay. Now, what we do, because the karmas are not something which is static, what you do today, there is it's going to change. This is where you have to understand that there is no such thing called privileged and non-privileged. A person who can be born at a very, very simple, you see people like Narendra Modi, Obama, very simple backgrounds. And what do they become? And you can have a person who is born in the richest family and a drug addict. So please don't think that, they are all people who are privileged are always privileged and they remain privileged, and people who are not privileged are always doomed. There is no such thing. Life is totally dynamic. And in fact, right now, in the US, Silicon Valley, all the very successful Indians, most of them come from a very, very middle class families. Ask who from the very elite families are there? Nobody. They are all billionaires in Silicon Valley. Okay? There is no such thing called privileged, non-privileged. It's all a dynamic thing. Okay? So within that, all these laws are operating. Things are changing all the time. Okay? And this is where, if the bodies have come due to laws, then Avatara, has it come because of karma? Avatara has not come because of karma. That given form is assumed to fix a certain problem in the world which otherwise cannot be fixed. If the distortion is so much that largely there is adharma and people who are following dharma, they find it difficult to operate, then there needs to be some correction. Okay? Generally, we ourselves correct. It's not that every time we need an avatara. For example, the financial and economic crisis became a trigger point for people to rethink the economic systems. Something which was taken for granted, this consumerism and all, the whole paradigm came into questioning. I mean, at the UN there was this whole big thing about sustainable development, something which has human aspects, then all these different ways of looking at development and not this traditional way of looking at, more you consume, higher GDP, higher GNP, and therefore better growth. That whole thing was questioned. So that means we human beings ourselves at times we correct our systems based on the certain events that occur.
Or what they say, thesis, antithesis.
Yeah. But at times there are such bigger things which need a bigger level correction, and this is what we call avatara. A given form is assumed to take care of a given problem. So that is what we call avatara. It's not subject to law of dharma, which is karma, right? But it is something which is come to accomplish a given task. That is avatara. Then you may think that now Ishvara is all knowledge and all presence, and I am what? This small little individual who is subject to the laws of Ishvara. This is where karmani akarmayah pashyat, you are re-reminded of your relationship with this Ishvara. Okay? Are you this tiny little individual? When you did the inquiry about who are you, what did you come up with? I am Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Okay? So that means I am awareness which is existent, and I am limitless. Then, what is this all knowledge and all power, and what is the relationship between you, the Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, and what? This entity Ishvara, which is all knowledge and all power. That is another thing. Okay? So now, Saha Buddhiman Manusheshu. So how Lord Krishna does not all the time only what? Give emphasis to him as a person or Ishvara. He is constantly talking about who? Tattvavit Buddhiman Manusheshu. So that means there is some kind of an identity between Ishvara and Jiva, the individual. Okay? So that's where we again understand the relationship between all knowledge and awareness. So for now, this is the final thing that one needs to understand if one needs to understand the three basic aspects of Vedanta. One is the nature of Atma. What is the nature of Atma? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. What is the nature of the universe? It is mithya. It is forms, which depend upon this awareness for its existence. Who organizes these forms? Ishvara. Exactly. The forms are not just random forms, they are organized by Ishvara, what? Through series of laws, and being the material cause, what it is also pervading the forms. Pervading the forms, it governs the forms. Okay? So now, you then need to ask, what is the relationship between this all knowledge and all power and awareness? You have to use again what? Satya Mithya relationship. Does that particular relationship you can easily understand if you look at the relationship between your little knowledge and awareness. Your little knowledge, is it mithya or is it satya? It is mithya, it depends upon awareness. Now, that little knowledge depends upon awareness for its existence. Does awareness depend upon your little knowledge?
No.
Okay. Now, if all knowledge is much bigger than what?
Your
My
knowledge.
little knowledge, right? Your knowledge, which is much bigger, no doubt about it. Okay. Can it exist without awareness? No. Awareness is independently existing of all knowledge. So that means the truth of Ishvara is same Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. So this is where the whole equation Tat Tvam Asi is resolved. Okay? The resolution does not take place at Vachyartha. Vachyartha is the immediate meaning. In the immediate meaning, you are this little individual, and Ishvara is what? The
Everything.
entire, exactly, everything. Right? There we are not saying there is a resolution. Please understand. But the truth of this individual is what? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. And the truth of that Ishvara, which is all knowledge and all power, is equally Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. It is only one awareness, okay, which on one hand appears as all knowledge, okay, and within that all knowledge, what? All the different forms and all the different relationships
So,
between
what
different
you have been
forms
saying is Atma and Paramatma are the same.
are the same.
And so, your awareness is part of Ishvara also.
Yeah, in fact, it's not here. The awareness is only one,
Yeah.
as though appears as
It
all,
is
all
there's no
knowledge.
separation.
There is no separation. So the relationship is like wave,
And
which is
water.
individual,
Ocean.
okay, ocean, which is Ishvara, and water, which is the content of both. The wave, when you look at the truth of the wave, what is it? It's nothing but water, with that little form. What is the ocean? It is water, but in all that, containing all the different waves and everything. But what is the truth of that ocean? Equally water. Is water at any time
different. It's not.
Dependent upon ocean or wave for its existence, it's totally free. But can ocean exist without water?
No.
Can the wave exist without water? No. Okay? Awareness is the final truth. And if the wave has understood that the truth of I is water and truth of Ishvara is equally water, at that point there is resolution. In the form, there is a difference. The person is not confused about the forms. The person is not confused about the fact that Ishvara gives rise to what? All these different forms, and different laws apply which govern how the interaction is going to take place within different forms. That the person is not confused. And within that, the person will do what? What needs to be done according to the laws. This is a wise person.
The wave has to play its role.
Yeah, the wave has to play one's role, because that is not totally not a reality. It is a relative reality. Okay? So that means this whole thing about a wise person, if he knows the reality, he will not do. No, the wise person knows that the whole game is set up by Ishvara. And there are laws. And I have to play my part within those laws. But the whole thing depends upon one truth, which is my truth. So this is something akarmani akarma yav pashit. This person is free, because while engaging in the world, what happens? He understands awareness never takes any, performs any action. Okay? So all that we have seen up to now. Then this class we saw that if I want to understand this awareness as my true nature, and if I want to leave everything and I want to take sannyasa, then what he says is this dukkham aptum ayogataha. Because if you leave everything without what? Preparing yourself through karma yoga, then it will be wasteful life. You think that you are pursuing knowledge, but you will not what? Get anywhere. Okay? But yoga yukto munihi brahma na achirena vikacheti. But if you are endowed with karma yoga, you have taken care of all these distortions, then na achirena. This knowledge will, in not long, it will take before you understand this knowledge. So therefore, he says that yes, two lifetime choices are given to you. One is sannyasa and the other one is karma yoga. But karma yoga is more suitable, because everybody has distortions. Nobody is free from it. Okay? And to bypass those distortions is not a solution. You have to stay there and you have to undo the distortions so that you can become eligible for this knowledge. So all this we have seen so far.
This was the ultimate example of wave, ocean and water.
Yeah, it is the ultimate example. Exactly.
For the material.
For my information, sorry.
I
Yeah.
was saying for the material cause and the efficient cause, you also need somewhere I read the example of the spider.
Yeah.
It's the creator of the web.
And the
Connects
it's a
well to
both-
the web of life also.
Yes, exactly. And also the other example is dream example. Yeah.
Which one?
So the dream example.
Yeah.
You're the maker,
You are
and you're the
the-
material
Yeah.
for the
You are the material.
material.
But this wave thing is the
Way
Is very.
yeah.
So all this we have seen so far. Because you're right, you lose track of what exactly is happening and how we are
It's very nice
progressing.
today.
So
Yeah.
it is
Together.
very nice for a year end class to have the entire
absolutely.
The
summary.
review of the year.
Yeah, review of the
Year-end
what you
review.
study. Exactly, year-end review.
And
Yes, yes.
so we have also made a nice transition, I think, to Yoga Shastra. This Karma Yoga part seems to be taking us into that Yoga Shastra,
Yeah.
like you said in that first session, that there is one aspect of Bhagavad Gita
Yeah.
and Brahma.
In fact, those four Yoga Shastra, I explained this Karma Yoga, four major verses. They themselves
They
are
are
a very, very
already
important aspects of. And then he's coming back again and he's explaining Ishvara, because Ishvara is a very important part of understanding Vedanta too. So he then moved on to Ishvara. Then he will talk about meditation. So now you will see how he progresses.
Thank you.
We'll start with a prayer. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.